Welcome to Saga Hunter's YouTube channel. I want to do a little bit of a product review of Marie's watercolors. This is a very budget friendly brand. It comes out of China. The website is actually chinamaries.com, and I paid about 10 euros. I think that's about $12 or so US, and I got the 12 tube set. It is a fairly good sized tube with 12 milliliters of paint, concentrated watercolor, and there's not a whole lot of information about it on it. On the tubes there are some generic color names and a color number, but there is no pigment information and no light fast ratings. They say it conforms to ASTM and some other standards, and that pretty much is it. And it's certified non-toxic. That's a good thing, because then you can let kids use them. At least I don't think they should eat it, but they can get it on the skin and stuff. And then there's a bit of story about the company and in here. They use refined gum, which would be gum arabic, which is actually a sugar, and make them easily dissolvable in water. There's no information about pigments or what fillers they use other than the gum arabic. I'm quite sure there's a good deal of fillers in here because pigments are expensive, and the way to make cheap watercolors is to put fillers in here. I'm trying to see if they call it art grade. I haven't really seen it, so there's nothing on the bottom. So at least they don't do that. Marie Watercolours was formulated to offer a high standard quality within a moderate cost limit. Their purity, quality, and reliability is a result of great care in the preparation of these colors. But they don't say it's art grade, which is good, because they're not. I tried them out already, so I know what I think about them already. So, but let's see how they do. I squeezed out some colors, and I have, as I said, tried them out a little bit. There are 12 colors, and I'll read them up to you. There is the generic white, and I suspect this to be a Chinese white. I'm not sure, because it just says white. A lemon yellow, yellow ochre, vermilion, and that is definitely not the real vermilion. This is the vermilion hue. Crimson, burnt sienna, burnt umber, sap green, green deep, violet, Prussian blue, and black. It's a little bit of an odd mix. I am missing an ultramarine or a cobalt blue hue in here for my reddish blue. Instead they put a violet in, which is okay, but it's not quite the same. I'll get back to that, why that is not quite the same. And yeah, they add black. That is not so bad. White is useless in watercolors, in my opinion. But for some reason it is almost always in all generic sets. So let us put this to one side. I might grab it again later. I don't know how these re-wet, because I used them fresh out of the tube when I was trying. Because there's only one blue, I was mixing it in with some of the white to make a lighter blue. So that's what's going on here. The rest are quite clean. One of the things that sets the very cheap and the very expensive watercolors apart, aside from information about pigments and things is that cheap watercolors are often filled with fillers, so they don't have to put so much pigment in, which often will make them somewhat opaque. So let's try and make a good wet wash here and see how opaque they are. The yellow is fairly okay. It's a little bit opaque. Oops, and my water picks up the black ink, so I better not scrub at that too much. That was the lemon yellow. I will move and zoom a bit so you get a better view of it. Move my camera. There. Can maybe even zoom in a bit more. There. That's I think that's as far as it goes. It is. It's a little bit opaque. Not too bad. I'll try again now that it had a little time to re-wet. Yeah, it is somewhat opaque. The more pigment you pick up, the more opaque it is, and which is quite characteristic for a watercolor with a good deal of filler. It thins out okay to a more transparent color. I got a water spray here. I think I'll wet them a little bit because they're a little slow to wet, which is also a thing that I often see in cheaper colors because the fillers make them slower to react. Now, a yellow ochre is not a good color to test if it's a expensive or cheap watercolor you got, because that is almost always quite opaque. It's one of the oldest known pigments to man. The cave paintings you know of is made with iron oxides, and ochre being one of them. So it's no surprise that the yellow ochre is quite opaque. So, but it looks like a yellow ochre. I can't tell if it's a single pigment or a mixture. It looks generally enough. Then we have the vermilion hue. It's not a real vermilion because you can smell a real vermilion, but it's an orangey red, and that is okay. Not very many brands offers the real vermilion anyways. It's very, very orange for even a vermilion. It's a little bit opaque. Not as much as the yellows, but still, you can tell it's there. And it thins out quite okay. Now, I won't say so much about it quite yet. I'll just kind of go on swatching things out. Oh, that one didn't get much water. Is that a crimson? The other red? Yeah. We get to the crimson red now. I'd say they wet okay in my palette here after they have dried overnight. It's a fairly transparent red, at least initially. Let's see. Yeah, that's okay, transparent. And it waters out quite okay. There's a fly crawling on my camera, so if it goes out, it gets black a little bit. It's the fly that crawls across the lens. So that's this is a fairly vibrant red as well. And we get to the burnt sienna. That could also well be somewhat opaque because it's an iron oxide. some more pigment out of here. Come on. So I need to move the camera down. Change the light. There. It will stop flashing out when it dries a bit. Yeah, that it's a bit on the red side for a burnt sienna, but it can pass, and it's not too opaque. Now, we got the burnt umber. I don't understand why they put a burnt umber in instead of a raw umber. A raw umber is a very dark grayish brown, and this is a very yellowish brown that is not very much different from the burnt sienna. It is different, but not as different as a raw umber would be. But yeah, looks generally enough. And here is the sap green coming. That doesn't wet as well in the pan as the others have done. I have to scrub it out a little bit. Yeah, that's very transparent, but it's also quite not very pigmented. That could be. It's a nice sap green, not too bright. It's a little gritty though. It's not very fine milled pigments, which doesn't surprise me, because the finer milled the pigments are, the smaller they are, the more expensive they are. So I do not expect high milled pigment in a cheap watercolor. The dark green here really doesn't dissolve well, and by the color it has, I could suspect that it's a viridian green. They just called it a deep green, but there could be some viridian green in here, and that viridian green is notoriously known for being difficult to re-wet in the pans once it's dry. It's a nice color. It has a bluish green color to it, but as I said, it re-wets really poorly, and that makes it a little hard to work with. It is a color that works best if you take a little bit out of a tube and use it right away. Now here's the violet, and that is, it has the right color of a dioxazine violet, but it's quite faint. It thins out really quickly. Normally a dioxazine violet will be very, very strong and very, very dark in its darkest tone. Here it's half strength, so they probably thinned it out a bit. Now I'm gonna try this Prussian blue, or so-called Prussian blue. I'll show you side by side with another Prussian blue later. It's a nice color. I don't know what it is. To me it looks more like a cerulean blue, but it kind of falls between what I normally know as a cerulean blue-green shade and a Prussian blue. And in this case it turns out to be quite good, because if it had been a real Prussian blue, it would have been really difficult to mix any purples out of it. And here's the black, and it's a nice thick black, and it goes out to a fairly neutral gray when you thin it out. It's a little bit on the red side, but not too bad. We will have to use it later. So that's all the colors. I haven't swatched out the white. I should do that, but I need to make it another black line because I ran out of space. Zoom out again a bit. And center my camera in. Up here, I'll make a black line. And leave that to dry a little bit. So this far they have not been terrible. Generally cheap paints are often not as bad as they have been once. Pretty much they all have some color to them. The times where you didn't get any paint out of a cheap, oh nice, we let that dry a little bit longer. Yeah, well, the times where you don't get anything out of a cheap pan of watercolor is fortunately not so common anymore. Now I'll go back to the violet here, and I'll use this one of, I don't know what's, hang on, and I'm back. This is the purple. It looks like a dioxazine purple. It has the right color, and what you usually use it for is, other than making violets, it is often used either in itself as a replacement for black. 2 seconds. The cat wandered out, I'm sorry. Yeah, you use it either in itself as a replacement for black, or you mix in a little bit of yellow to make it even darker. The yellow is the contrast color to purple or violet, and together they will make a dark gray normally. I got a little bit of yellow here that I'm mixing in, and in this case it does not act as you would normally see it. This makes kind of a reddish gray brown depending on how you mix it. And I was trying yesterday quite hard to make these two colors, the yellow and the violet, to make a black, and it is next to impossible. And that makes me think that this is, first of all, not very pigmented, and second of all, I'm thinking this is a mixture of some other pigments. It's not a real dioxazine violet. So this can't really mix anything much darker than this, and it's not quite dark enough and black enough. I need to mix in a lot of things to make that, so it's kind of fortunate that the black is not too terrible in this set. Moving on. Another way of making a blue or a bluish gray, or a kind of a gray tone that is good for fog and stuff like that, well, is a burnt sienna, which is here. And then you would normally use a reddish blue like the ultramarine, but we got none, so I'm trying with this one. And it's not working. You get a very green color out of this. It is a nice green. It's kind of a muted green, but it is not even close to what that shadow green or shadow gray you would normally get. And just adding more red makes it just another shade of brown. So and I was trying hard, and you get browns and greens from this. So that's another traditional watercolor mix that does not work with this because it's not the right kind of blue. And so you go, well, let's try with a with the purple then, but that's too red. This might have worked if we had had the raw umber to mix in here, but we don't. The closest thing we got is burned umber, so we'll try mix this in, and that just makes it blackish, dark brown, almost Van Dyke brown. It's a fine brown, but it's not a gray. So again, the neutrals are a little bit difficult to mix with this set, so that makes you lean on that black to get your neutrals, and it's a matter of taste if you like it or not. What makes me a little sad is if people buy this in order to learn how to watercolor and they go online or take a course or read a book or something and they get advised about how to mix these neutral colors, and no matter what they do, it just doesn't happen. And that is of no fault of their own. It is because these are, I suspect these are multiple pigments. There's 2 or 3 or 4 pigments in each of these colors, and that makes them difficult and hard, a little bit unpredictable to mix compared to what you would normally see in more defined and known brands. This is actually one of the reasons why you will see some watercolorists have a strong opinion about only buying single pigment colors, because if you got only one pigment in each paint, you kind of get a more predictable result when you start mixing colors. Now I will try and do the primaries, a blue and a yellow. This is a very green blue, so this will mix good greens, and it actually did yesterday for me. It goes right from the dark green, kind of a grassy green, and you can get a bright yellowish green. It doesn't look so bright on my screen, but it looks fine on my paper. Absolutely fine greens. And I'll try and take a little bit of this, and when I clean off my brush, I'll mix this with the, I keep forgetting that red, I put it there. It's a crimson red, which is a bluish red, a cold red, so this should make a good and decent purple. And it kind of does, which is a little bit surprising since that is a greenish blue, so it's not too, it's a little bit of a muted purple. I'll see if I can thin it out so you see it better, but it's absolutely usable. It's actually a nice muted purple. It's not too gray, so you will be able to use it, definitely. When you have it thick mix here, it looks a little bit brownish. It looks like a dark reddish brown. So, but this is what I expected. I actually expected a worse outcome, a more gray outcome, so that is not too bad of a mix. So let's try the vermilion. It is very orange in itself. It is actually too orange to really pass as a vermilion. I'd say it looks like more like a cadmium orange hue. Well, that's okay, because the yellow in this set is a green, slightly greenish yellow. I think they call it a lemon yellow, which is also a greenish yellow, but it's often more of a neutral yellow. Yeah, I call it a lemon yellow, but I'd say it's almost a chartreuse yellow. It's more green than I normally see a lemon yellow. So I expect this to be a little bit of a muted orange, and it is. It's not quite a tan color or a peach color, but it is a slightly muted orange. So you can't do very much with that vermilion orange at all. And you can make muted oranges, because if I take that yellow and mix it with crimson, I get even more muted oranges. This is good if you need skin tones and things like that, but it's kind of sad if you need some oranges for flowers. This is very, very powerful compared to the yellow, so I need more yellow. A little bit goes a long way. I'm trying to zoom in on that. See, they're not terrible oranges, they're just not as warm and bright as I would like them to be. You could use them, and for the set being what it is, it's absolutely okay. And they don't dry up too dusty. They actually dry up nicely on this paper. How good or bad your watercolors look depends not only on the watercolor itself, but also on the paper you use it on. If you use paper with a sized surface treated surface where the water can't, and especially the pigment can't penetrate into the paper pulp, then you get generally brighter colors than if you have absorbent paper where the pigment sinks into the paper. So you get kind of a gray surface because the surface of the paper is visible through the pigment. So yeah, that was the secondaries. Now you got this violet here, and that might be you can use it in place of the missing ultramarine. You can, with the crimson, do some reddish purples that is quite bright. So for you won't be wanting for reddish purples and mauves and things like that. You can mix them with this violet, but you can't make a sky blue really. It will be greenish, and there's a whole range of the cerulean blues and stuff like that. You can't do it because you haven't got the right kind of blue. You only got that one. Now this is a cheap brand, so, and I looked online, and there are more blues if you get the 18 set, which is the next size. I only got the 12 set. I paid $10 for this, and I can get for 12 something euros on Amazon. I can get the 18 set, and I would recommend to get that because you get a little more colors. This does not mix quite as well as more high-end watercolors do, so you need a little more colors to start with, and then you can mix and adjust those. And yeah, I want to try out the greens and get an idea of how many greens I can get out of this set. One way is to mix the greens you can get out of the blue and the yellow, but you can also take the greens that is already here and add either some yellow to them. Yeah, that pushes away the green pigment, but you can force it to mix. So that gives a nice light green. I'll try a little bit of the blue. And yeah, you get another darker bluish green there that is different from that one over there. So that is quite okay. That is 2, 3, that's 5 good greens this far. And you can take the other green, this viridian looking green, mix in with a little bit of more blue. And that's a difficult mix because you will really need a lot of that green because it is not a strong color. The blue dominates totally, but you can make a decent dark green, dark bluish green there. And now I've muddled that up, I need a new spot to paint with. I really have to scrub a lot on this. This doesn't re-wet very well. There. And it was the yellow I was gonna try out with this. Yeah. So that you get 3 greens out of each of the greens, so that is 8 greens at least, and then you can mix them in together, and you can also add a little bit of one of the reds to make a more grayish line of greens. So that is quite okay. Mix them together. So, and they match up quite nicely. The greens do dry out a little bit faint, especially the pigment ones. The one you mix from the primary colors is stronger. They have not put very much green pigment in the green tubes, and that's probably my biggest complaint. I would have liked some more pigment in the greens. You can try and build some layers up, and we can try actually and see how well that goes. It does, a new layer doesn't add very much to it, but it also doesn't pick up too bad pigment underneath, so you can glaze over it. And so for €10 I'm actually quite positively impressed. I'm not impressed with how they name the colors because it's kind of inaccurate. I want to go back to this Prussian blue, for instance, and I'm gonna grab my tin of this is my black box of Winsor and Newton Artist paints. This is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, and this is the Prussian blue, and it looks nothing like that. So this actually looks more green than this does. It's kind of weird. And let me check out here. This is the Winsor blue, and that is really a flated blue green shade. And it's not quite that either. So this set's Prussian blue lands between a flated blue and a Prussian blue. I wonder if it's a mix of the two, which would be really weird, because if you only add one blue to a set of paints, it should be kind of a cyan blue that can be used either way, which is the kind of the real primary blue. But this one haven't performed too poorly. This was a decent purple, and you can make the reddish purples here with the violet that they included. So you can use it. But if you wanna get into mixing your own blacks and grays, this is absolutely not the set for that. That is useless. They didn't come out right. My grays and blacks. So more pigment in the green, and don't try to mix blacks. You have to use the black that is included, and I haven't really tried that. I can try that. So that was the burned umber, and you get something that looks like a raw umber when you add the black to it. So that's actually not too bad. And I suspect if you take the burnt sienna and mix the black into it, you get what looks like a sepia color. That black is really strong. You barely have to touch it to get a lot of powerful black pigment. Yeah, it can pass for a sepia. Not a good one, but it can be used. So you get quite a good range of colors from this set. I'm a little unsure if I really want to recommend it. If you have 10-12 euros/dollars to use and nothing more, then absolutely go for it. If you can either wait or do with a fewer pans and stuff, I would go and get Winsor and Newton Artist instead, or the Russian White Knights. They go under the brand name Sonnet or Hammond. At least those two is what I know. They might have another, but they always sell their sets as White Knights, as in the dark of night, not a man on a horse in an iron suit, but a knight, opposite to day. White Knights. They are really good, and they're not very expensive. And with watercolors, you don't need a lot of colors, because as you can see, you can really mix your way into getting more out of a few colors. So I'd say a moderate recommendation. If you just want to try it out and want to have a host of colors, get the 18 set. I think you'll get further with that. You can use this, but it will really test your intuition for mixing colors, and you might get some surprising results. So thank you for watching.